Hi everyone. We're going to start in a second. So take your seats and drinks and foods, whatever. And welcome our guests here, starting with Bozenaheim from Pias, Deborah Smith from Anara Publishing, and Danny Engrove from Red Light Management. And we're going to talk about how to develop an artist, how to promote on an international level. But first I'd like to introduce our guests a little bit in more details. So starting with Bozenaheim is the general manager for Poland, Eastern Europe at Pias, Play It Against Them, where she has led operations for over 3 years now, overseeing marketing strategies, digital campaigns, product performance for key releases across the region. Before becoming a general manager for Pias, she served as a senior product and digital manager, where she was responsible for devising and executing marketing campaigns, managing digital content, and just all the digital aspects of the bands. And before this, she was also a music. It doesn't work? Yeah. So before joining Pias, she was the music editor at Apple Music in Poland, where she was creating playlists. And before that, she worked at Universal Music Group for some time.
You read my LinkedIn.
Everything. Yeah, I just grabbed. Got all the details for you and for the others as well. So yeah, so she worked at Universal and helped managing campaigns for artists like Lady Gaga, Katy Perry, Ellie Goulding, and many others. So she's coming hardly from the label side, I guess we can say.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Okay. So, and also she has a great coffee and vinyl
not anymore.
shop. Not anymore. Oh, okay. So Deborah from Anara Publishing. She's the co-founder and director of Anara Publishing, an innovative music publishing company launched in 2017, based in the UK with an additional office in India. Anara focuses on providing independent songwriters with comprehensive music publishing and sync licensing services, emphasizing cross-cultural and global music representation. She plays a crucial role in the company's growth and international strategy, signing new songwriters and composers to the roster, and managing relationships with PROs worldwide, and building a network of music supervisors to secure sync deals. Yes, and she's also she's representing a very diverse roster of catalog, including artists from the UK, USA, India, Nigeria, Israel, and I'm sure many other countries as well. Okay, so she's coming from the publishing side quite a bit. And then lastly, Danny Engrove. Oh, sorry, one sec, just this thing needs internet for some reason, suddenly. But let me just find it quickly somewhere else. Sorry guys, just a second. Yeah, so Danny is a global manager at Red Light Management, where he oversees high-level clients like Jordan Rakei, The Heavy, and BAFTA-winning composers Tendai Humphrey, Sitima, and Glenn Andre Brown, for example. With over 6 years of experience, Danny has worked with senior management teams, international labels, and DSPs to execute global campaigns, as well as international touring campaigns, including artists like Bonobo, and he worked on his sold-out European campaign tour in Europe and the US. Additionally, to his management role, he's the founder and editor of the music website One on One, where he interviewed artists like AC/DC, the 1975, and George Ezra, among others. He's also written articles for the Huffington Post, particular focus on the role of social media and politics and engaging young audiences. So you're mainly coming from the manager side,
Yes, that's correct.
Right, yeah. So we got label, publisher, and manager. And my first question to all of you would be is that it might be a bit oversimplification that you're representing all these sides, because I'm sure your tasks overlap a lot, but still, from your unique perspectives, what do you see as the most pressing challenges in developing an artist these days, and how has it changed in the recent, let's say 5-6 years, perhaps? Danny, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. Is this thing on, by the way? Fantastic. So I think particularly in the last 5 or 6 years, I personally think the issue, to an extent, is attention and consumer attention spans. I think not only has it never been more expensive to get digital content in particular in front of an audience, but there are also fewer publications and fewer curators almost than ever before. And I think the audience attention is so fragmented nowadays across social media and across general culture. You know, the first impression really, really counts more than ever. And I think that a great song is always going to be a great song, but it's getting people to hit the play button that's the primary issue nowadays.
Okay. Deborah, what's your take?
Yeah, I was kind of going to say that with social media and everything, there's so much pressure on an artist to do so many different things that I guess on my side, because I'm working more with the songwriters, composers on that side of things, it's kind of getting them to focus on some of the stuff that we can do for them, like writing for other artists or bespoke opportunities and stuff like that. I think like it's so challenging for them to have to basically be in front of social media all the time.
Okay, so this is what changed the most in the last few years?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Okay. And are you working them as songwriters or with an artist representation?
Most of our writers are also artists themselves.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Rosanna, what's your...
I would add on top of that, there's less time to develop artists because, you know, everyone's after quick money, the next viral thing. So I think back in the days when you signed an artist, you know, there was a space and time that, you know, they could grow, and these days there's just less and less time, and time is luxury.
Okay. And at what stage do you like to step in an artist's career or life, let's say? So when do you go and say, okay, this artist is ready to get my attention, your attention?
Well, I think it depends on the artist, really, because it can be at any stage. Obviously, labels like artists who are, you know, a bit established, that, you know, we like to see that they can do stuff for themselves, they can create their fan base, they have social media presence, and, you know, they have maybe some music released, they have some success, some data to share. So, you know, we like to see that, obviously, but it can be at any stage. If there's something great that never, you know, been released before, we can sign it too.
So at PS you work with local artists and international artists at the same time, right? Yeah, I mean,
international obviously come from, you know, UK and headquarters in Belgium, so it's, you know, it can come from any territory. But we do sign domestic artists as well.
What's the ratio?
It's not many. We just very small office at the moment. It's just 3 people, so, you know, it's just this as much as we can do, obviously, with such small team. But we have 5 domestic artists on our roster, but it's, you know, we're signing more and it's going to be growing. But we're doing a lot of digital distribution, which is not that time consuming. And we help artists in that sector too.
Yeah, well, in that case, a big part of your job, I assume, is to develop the foreign artists in Poland. And
I mean, yeah, to break them or, you know, to help them grow, yes, definitely. But then, you know, you have all the tools ready and you have everything supplied, so you don't create from the beginning. So it's much easier because you're just a part of the puzzle. And with domestic, obviously, we help to create everything from the beginning.
How would you define the Polish market? Is it? I guess it's not easier than any other, but what's the unique
I mean,
take?
It's a bit different to UK and I think Western Europe. I suppose it's quite similar to what's going on here in Hungary. There's physical sales is still strong. People even buy CDs. So I think, yeah, I mean, and then challenges are everywhere the same.
There are many similarities, I'm sure, but there's also a big difference. Poland is huge, and
yeah, I mean, and it's also in live sector. It's very difficult for, I would say, debut artists and like mid-range artists, because there's not many venues, like a small venues to play. So it's easier. I mean, you know, big artists can make good money, but to get to that point is very difficult.
Yeah, this also leads me to my next question or topic, is that developing an artist locally versus internationally. Like, how do you weigh pros and cons, and at what stage do you think it's time to go international, or an artist can go straight international, or it depends, and varies from artist to artist? How do you see this, Danny?
That's a good question. I think that when I'm developing an artist, I like to look at least with a European approach as a very baseline. I think that to try to do a full global approach means that you can often try and do everything and not do anything particularly well, at least at the very early stage. And I think if we're talking with an artist who doesn't have maybe a defined fan base, a really grassroots artist, I think that trying to identify core markets where maybe similar artists have performed particularly well in the past, or where you have particular experience or a network or expertise, can be the most beneficial thing. But I think in terms of a timeline of when to look internationally, I'm personally far more inclined to think internationally to begin with, and then scale back if really necessary, dependent on budget or time constraints. Or if one market is particularly blowing up, divert resources to there, but be reactive to it as well.
Yeah, I'm sure there are differences from country to country, and UK is definitely a place that people use to catapult into an international audience, so you might be in a better position probably with your artists if they are from the UK.
I think it's really helpful that the UK, as well as many other places, definitely has a music culture. And I think the audiences are, by default, quite receptive to new music. And I do think that is a really helpful thing. And also in terms of, I guess, key cities, you can do a UK tour and you can go, there are venues in most major cities ranging from 200 cap all the way up to arenas, which can be really helpful for breaking artists as well.
Deborah, you work with a lot of international artists.
Yeah, I think on the publishing side of things, there's less barriers now in terms of like breaking an artist internationally, especially on the sync side of things. I'm hearing a lot from music supervisors that they want to hear music from different areas of the world, and it doesn't necessarily matter what language things are in. Like, music can still be relatable for other people. Like, I met with someone in LA a couple of weeks ago who's actually looking for music from Hungary. We've had a UK-based composer write for a Bollywood film in India. So yeah, and in terms of like thinking about what markets to take them to, I think for me, I just kind of see if there's like an affinity with the writer themselves, the artist. But there's so many opportunities out there. We get a lot of briefs in for K-pop artists where we can submit demos in English and then they get translated. So there's tons of opportunities on the publishing side to look outside of your home market, no matter where you're from.
Okay, and what is it that you're looking for in an artist before signing or going?
For me, it's just like a personal thing, whether I connect with the music or what they're looking to do and stuff like that. It's probably a lot different for other publishers, but for me, I think it's important that me and the team love the music so that we can authentically pitch it to people, and it makes sense that we're part of their team and we've got like a shared goal.
And are you looking for certain national or cultural characters or traits? Just because you have such a wide variety.
We organically just started working in India. Like a large portion of our roster is from India, and that just happened very naturally through just people that I knew and figuring out that there was actually nobody there on the ground to help these guys. Like, the publishing industry didn't exist in India at all when we first went in, and I just wanted to help these artists get paid for their music. But no, I'm not really necessarily looking for anything really specific. I'm open to hearing anything. It's not a very helpful answer, but
no, it's good. And do you think, or do you think there are ways to develop an artist through sync and are you trying to do that? Like,
sync is obviously a buzzword for all indie artists because it can be so lucrative in terms of the money that is paid for licenses, but it's such a challenging thing to break because we pitch to like hundreds of things, but at the end of the day, there's just a director or a production company or something at the end of it, and it's a very subjective decision that whether they like the music or not. So I think that, it can be a great way to break into a new market by having your music featured in a production, but a lot of stars have to align for it to work out.
Yeah, and it's becoming a more and more uphill battle as well.
To it? Yeah, because on that note, I don't think it's just it's enough. I mean, it's a great piece of a puzzle to have a sync on a Netflix show, for example. What we've had in Poland, this artist called Daniel Spaleniak, and he's had a lot of songs on Ozark, and nothing happened for him. Like, he thought, he succeeded already, but still, you need to have a great plan and execute it.
Yeah, you've got to be thinking about what you do after the music is used in that project and releasing new music after it. Like, it isn't the be all and end all. And also there's just so much content being made these days that I don't think anyone can even watch it all. So, I
think as well, if I can add to that, I think that sync can be a really useful launching pad. However, there's still a real disconnect between the song and the artist. I work with a band called The Heavy, who have had so many syncs on a couple of major songs. But the song is bigger than them. People know the song and don't always know the artist's name. And it's working out, like you just said, how to capitalize on that with a great plan. That's the important part. However, having said that, income from sync can obviously be really useful for a lot of reasons. Because then you can think, okay, I couldn't do this tour that makes sense before because I couldn't afford it, but now I'm going to reinvest some of this money from the sync into maybe using that as a launch pad. So it's kind of the peripheral things that go with the sync as well that can be really helpful from my experience.
Yeah, so just one note about the sync becoming a more and more uphill battle, I guess, is that production libraries are reportedly, making more money than labels from sync or publishers as well, I guess.
Yeah, budgets are being driven down dramatically from the production
And actually
side.
It just came out a few days ago how from the RIAA, it's minus 10% drop or something in labels sync income.
It's frustrating for us because obviously the music should be connected to the artist and the person and the story behind it, but increasingly we're seeing people being like, well, I can get a library option much cheaper. So.
Yeah, and even now Udio and Suno are in that battlefield as well. I'm also working as a music supervisor and licensor sometimes, and I'm getting music lists from directors, filmmakers, and half of the songs they immediately try to figure out with Udio or Suno. They don't even consider a library for that, so it's pretty tough, I guess.
Scary.
But okay, enough of that. So you just mentioned how The Heavy is a bit disconnected from some of their songs that got a lot of rotation. But isn't this happening a lot in the DSP days and the playlist days and just this age where songs get a lot, may get a heavy rotation on certain playlists, and then it's just a song in people's heads, and how do you connect it back to the band, let's say?
That's a really good question. Again, I think that if I knew the answer, if anyone knew the answer, we'd all be sitting on a yacht and doing this via Zoom right now. I think that's where a real campaign is really important. I think, obviously, it's really great to have a song that blows up or a song that people know, but if you can't tie that back to an artist, and then from there, once it's been tied back, turn those consumers or maybe a passive playlist into fans and into an active, engaged audience. That's the really tricky thing. And I think that's the pivotal thing as well. It's great to be a one-hit wonder because you've had a hit that's more than most will ever have. But it's turning that into a career and becoming a career artist that I've seen artists struggle with sometimes.
Do you have a first-hand experience with such scenarios?
I think I'm fortunate because when I started working with The Heavy, the big tracks had already been syncing very regularly, and there was always, just maybe by gradual growth rather than one major impact, people had associated the band with the song, and people knew the music, and people knew the band behind it as well. But it has always been a real challenge at times to be like, oh, you know that song, you know that's by The Heavy, so you need to buy tickets to hear it live, or you need to listen to the new album, you know? Yeah. It's an ever-changing landscape as well. What worked now won't work in a year, and the best practice 5 years ago isn't the best practice nowadays. So it's hard to formulate a template based on what's happened before.
Publishing is, in Hungary, I think, is the least, I don't know, used or known entity in the music ecosystem, I guess, in some ways. Most of the artists and musicians don't have a publisher usually. Yeah. What do you think is your main role, especially in developing an up-and-coming artist?
Yeah, I definitely think that's not something that's unique to Hungary either. Like, it's conversations I have with artists, even in the UK. I think on my side, like, just educating artists, if you're writing songs, make sure you affiliate with a PRO, which is a performance rights organisation. It's never too early to do that. Even if you haven't released any music yet, get yourself registered, get your songs registered in there, so that when your music starts taking off, every time your music is streamed or downloaded anywhere, there's publishing revenue that is being generated for you, in order to, like, so yeah, I guess that's like the first step, and then a publisher can just really help you navigate the world. It's such a complex, I think unnecessarily complex part of the industry. It's very disjointed in some ways, so I think we really come in and help, track income in different areas, different markets, and we're very admin heavy. Most of my life is spreadsheets and all of that kind of stuff, not the most glamorous. But we can also help you creatively. For me, it's all about understanding the songwriter's needs and what they would want out of a publisher. But yeah, if you want to write for other people, if you want to collaborate with people on your own music, all of those kind of things is what we can help with, as well as obviously pitching to sync and all of that.
Okay. We've talked about DSPs a lot, and you work with DSPs a lot, also in the past and now. And so, how do you see where it fits in an artist's or band's strategy when they want to, I don't know, go
on the
grow?
record label side, obviously, it's the key element in every plan now. Spotify and other DSPs. So everyone is fighting for the best playlist, for playlist covers, for support from DSPs, because it's not just placement on playlists. They have great programs like Spotify Radar for new artists, or Tidal Rising. On every platform has something that can help artists launch the artists or grow them. Obviously, the on-platform marketing, off-platform activities. It can be out-of-home campaign, or their own social media campaign. So there's a lot. They do a lot, and they help a lot to promote. They basically replace radio now, so it's definitely a key part. But because as there's so much music and the million of tracks uploaded weekly, basically, to Spotify. So if you don't make it to the playlist, it's tough, but it's not the end of the world. So streaming platforms encourage, especially Spotify, to work actively to drive traffic towards those platforms, and they analyze data, and you can repitch the track. I mean, your record label can repitch the track. There are no tools on Spotify for artists to do that. But, it's not lost. So when the track picks up, or, sometimes you can have a sync, months after the track was released, and then it, gets traffic on Spotify, so it gets playlisted. So there's, a lot you can do to show them that you care.
And when you have a new artist, let's say, who's represented by Piast and coming into Poland, so how do you, how do you work out the strategy for them? And let's say in the different DSPs or other campaigns on social media, what's your mix, and how do you?
I mean, we mix.
What's your secret?
You mix everything. I mean, it really depends on the artist and depends on the genre, and you create the different plan for each artist. So it's really hard to tell.
But can you, I don't know, just give us an
Well,
example of a good campaign?
I think there's some basics that need to be covered. So if you're like, for example, a self-released artist, you need to remember to do certain things. You don't just drop the track and just do nothing and wait for a miracle. You need to be active, proactive, and you need to tick certain points. So there needs to be a pre-release campaign, then your track drops, and then you need to do something afterwards. Because you need to feed algorithms. You need to remember that it's not just dropping track after track and nothing else. So there's so much artists can do themselves.
Okay. About feeding algorithms, do you guys constantly try to figure them out, like what feeds the algos better and best?
It's so constantly ever changing. I think trying to figure that out would be a full-time job in itself. And I think the best thing to do is to look at what's worked for your artists historically in terms of content and in terms of activations and just what your fans react to as people. I think what we are kind of guilty of forgetting is that it's one thing to game the algorithm, but you can have 100,000 people see it. If it's not very good, nobody's going to care to begin with. And nobody is really going to know what's going to work next, but you have to know what's worked before. And I always, for so many aspects of the music industry, have found it so much easier to take something that's working or has worked and amplify it rather than try to manifest something from scratch. So I think rather than trying to game an algorithm, obviously there are best practices, they're ever evolving and ever changing, and you'd be a fool to ignore those. But I think if you stray too far from your own path and your artist's campaign and career and what's worked to try and feed some algorithm, you're going to alienate your existing fans and you're not going to reach any new ones. So that's a lose-lose as far as I'm concerned.
And when you devise a campaign, do you think of, or do you factor in that it should go viral and try to do as much as possible to support that possibility, or you're more on the side of
if you speak to any marketing agency, they will tell you no one knows what's going to be next viral. It's just unpredictable.
If anybody's telling you they know exactly how to make you go
They're
viral,
lying.
they're lying to you.
Yeah. But what about trends like on TikTok and other platforms that artists perhaps try to get on the wagon and?
I mean, of course they can, but I think they need to be true to themselves. It's they need to find their own voice, and it's not like you need to be lip syncing or dancing because everyone. Like some of the artists think they need to because that's where they associate TikTok with, but it's not true. I mean, when you do your research, you will see that there are many ways to approach it, but you need to be on the platform present because people who use those platforms, they also discover music on them. So 80% TikTok users, they discover music on TikTok, or it's the same. I think the same number for YouTube.
Yeah. And I think as well that TikTok isn't just about dance trends and crazes and whatnot. I think it's also about communities, and the fact that there are so many avenues of those communities on TikTok means that no matter what your niche is or what your artist's niche is, there's going to be an audience for it if you can find it and work out how to reach it. If your artist is really into World of Warcraft, how can I reach the World of Warcraft side of TikTok? And how can I align myself with that in a way that's organic to the artist, but that also the fans are going to engage with because it's real? And if the music is good as well, then that should hopefully sell itself.
Do you try to, let's say, profile the ideal listener or user of an artist and try to, build around that idea? Like, where do you reach those kind of people? Or you aim with a shotgun and just see how many people
obviously,
you need?
with every marketing campaign, you need to know your audience, and every artist can go to their the panels on Spotify, on YouTube, and they have to learn to read the data because it helps a lot.
To use a really clumsy analogy that might make me look like an absolute fool, if I took a bucket of paint and tried to hit everybody in this room, most of it would go on the floor and I might get a couple of droplets on some of you. If I just threw it at you, you get covered in all the paint. So if I know who I'm targeting, it's a lot easier to reach them.
And in publishing, do you have anything like that in mind?
No, I think on my side, we're not too focused on the algorithms and DSPs and stuff like that. I think especially for sync, most of the time it's about the music itself and whether that's right for the spot. There's the occasional brief that we might get in that says, you know, looking for someone who has a high profile and stuff like that. It tends to be more for like brands and advertising, but it's quite nice, I guess, on the most part, that we're not too concerned about what's what's viral.
Yeah. And how do you factor in the more traditional marketing channels like PR or radio? Where do you put that in your matrix?
I mean, it all still exists. Like, you know, there are radio stations, they just maybe play, different genres now, or, you know, like, especially in Poland, on the radio, there are, you know, old hits, and there's not much new music, so it's and mainly pop music, so it's very difficult. But we do have some rock radio stations, so definitely, I mean, not much press left, not much music on TV, but we still, I mean, we use what's out there as much as we can.
Same here, and I think that with PR in particular, because there are fewer outlets than ever before, you just need to think of what would engage you and what the story would be that would reel you in, you know? If somebody said to me, hey, this artist is on their 7th album, it sounds a bit like this, I might be like, okay, that sounds kind of cool. But if somebody says to me, oh, I've got this Scottish writer who's really inspired by the sounds of Japan and has spent time out there and is really engaged with that's interesting. And I think you need an interesting story and an interesting narrative nowadays.
And are you actively looking to sign new artists or acts, or is it something that if you see one that, you know, just really piques your interest and see that it would be a great to work with this artist, then you switch on the A&R?
Yeah, I'm torn between wanting to keep the roster nice and like small and manageable so we can focus on everyone, to always having my ears open, because you never know what's going to come into your inbox or something like that. So we are always open to hearing new music.
And what are the characteristics that you look for?
Like I said earlier, just something that personally I connect with, or something I can see that there's a lot of potential for, that we can do great things together. But yeah, I have no formula.
Okay.
No formula from my side either. I think that as a manager, I need to love it. Like, pure and simple. If I don't love it and I don't know how to explain why I love it, I'm not going to be able to do that with anybody, fan, industry, partner, whatever. And that's just fundamentally what it comes down to. I know some managers might look at spreadsheets and might make a business case, and there's always that aspect of it as well. But fundamentally, if I'm not a little bit obsessed with it to an unhealthy extent, I'm not the man for the job.
And with
Yeah,
you?
it's the same here. I mean, obviously we look on at trends and, you know, what's popular in the market at the same time, but, you know, it can go against all trends and be something fabulous. You know, you just go with your gut feeling, I suppose.
And do you have the, I don't know, mandate is a good word, but the opportunity to sign other than Polish artists at PS?
I mean, we do. We actually talked with some bands from Czech Republic a while ago. It unfortunately didn't happen, but yeah, we're open to it, definitely.
And what do you think should happen in order for that to happen?
It should be something great.
Do you look for artists, let's say, that who fits in your label's profile?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, yeah, it has to fit in our profile, although we, you know, quite open. We have, you know, so many different genres. Maybe we don't have like a big pop artists at the moment, but it can be any genre, really. We have lots of sub-labels, and, you know, we can fit it.
And do you work with a lot of different labels, or do you have one or two that you work with your artists?
Yeah, we work with a lot of different labels and a lot of international partners as well, which I think is really important to build a great cohesive global campaign. But in terms of the artists and the labels that we work with, you know, obviously there are people we work with well and get along with well, and labels we really respect. And it's always nice to get their opinion, but if they're not the right label for my client, they're not the right label for my client, you know? I think building a great team is the most important thing.
What do you expect from a label? From an artist's perspective, and in terms of developing an artist?
I think that really depends on the campaign and depends on the artist. But I think fundamentally, it's always really nice to see people who are genuinely engaged with a project and genuinely engaged with the artist and the art. And I think it's quite easy to spot maybe when a team isn't fully engaged. And I think with that, I really value transparency. And I really value someone just being honest and saying, okay, we thought this was going to work, this isn't going to work, so we're going to try this. Rather than a label team or any external team, just being like, yeah, we're working on this, we're working on this, we're working on this. Because then no one can be reactive, and ultimately, it's normally to the detriment of the campaign.
And what do you suggest for an up-and-coming artist when they think of a new album or a new songs campaign? Which media outlets they should focus on? Let's say if they have like zero budget, and if they have, let's say, a few $1,000 or more. But then
In terms of promotion, or that's a tricky question, I think, and I'm not sure I'll be able to answer it because it's so dependent on each artist. I think for some artists it might make sense to spend all of that on investing in a support tour or something like that. For other artists, Instagram or meta ads. For others, even radio. It really does depend on the campaign and what your aims are. But I think if you don't know your aims, it's very easy to waste that money. Having a cohesive set of goals for a campaign is always the smartest way to do it, and a set of backup plans as well, in case it doesn't work.
Any tips on that?
I completely agree, although I have a great case study, recent one, not from my label, but there is this band project, I would say, in Poland called Modelki, Models, and they, within 6 months, they managed to grow from 5K YouTube subscribers to 150K, and have had a viral hit and #1 airplay chart hit. So it's a great case study. You can look it up on YouTube. It's a specific kind of music, so I think they tapped into the certain audience. But I think it's a great example, and they did it with no ads on YouTube. It was all organically. They spent on content a lot, but I think it just shows that it can be done.
What do you think they did right?
They did. I mean, they had a great plan. I mean, they did tons of content, and obviously music helped as well, because it's just very mainstream, very kind of popular music, pop / hip hop. Maybe not hip hop, but it's just very simple. And it's close to, we have this genre in Poland, disco polo, which is the worst music ever, and I would never ever sign them myself. But it did work,
They make music in that genre?
Yeah, it was like a pop crossing with that genre. So, but they did a lot of, they spent money on content, like creating like sort of reality show, that kind of thing, and they kept posting YouTube shorts, and then it's just it ended with a few new tracks, and one of them breakthrough, and it was a major hit, and it's just huge success.
Okay. Oh, I thought you were.
No.
Okay. If anyone has a question to them, then you can also ask now. No?
Stunned silence.
Okay.
Covered everything. Music industry, done.
I wanted to ask about AI as well, like how it's changing your specific day-to-days or the artist's life in the aspect that you work with them. Can you give us some examples that it's
it replaces our art.
Yeah. It's
but
terrifying.
In a creative or positive way, I'm sure.
I think that AI can be a really useful time-saving tool if you use it properly. I am a massive geek, and I'm very proud of that fact. And I think that I managed to work out a lot of automations that really save me a lot of time. And I think that if you do stuff like write social copy or write creative stuff using an AI model, people can normally tell. People can normally see right through that. But using it as a prompt generator, or using it to even do little things, like for my artist tour, on the end of every Instagram post, we had a list of the tour dates with just a flag emoji next to it. We just asked AI to just render those for us, rather than having to do it manually. And it's stuff like that. finding ways to save yourself 10 minutes is a lot easier than finding ways to save yourself an hour. But if you can find a few little ways to shave off 10 minutes or 5 minutes, that really starts to add up, and that's really been to my benefit.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, on the sync side of things, it's pretty terrifying, and the prospect of AI. But I think there are a couple of things that I've seen recently, a couple of tools. For example, like often we'll get asked for stems or instrumental versions of songs quite quickly, and if you're an artist, have those to hand anyway. But there are a couple of things out there that mean that we can get the stems quite quickly and easily over to the production company and stuff like that. So yeah, I think that's probably the only silver lining I can think of right now.
I'd really just like to, from a management perspective, double down on how important it is to have instrumentals and stems prepared. Because it takes a surprisingly long time, and whenever we get requests through, they tend to be due in like an hour.
Yeah.
So just save yourself some time and maybe make yourself some money by rendering those out at source.
Yeah, the amount of conversations I've had with our artists where they're like, "Oh, I've lost the laptop that had the project on and stuff like that." I'm just like,
back up everything.
Yeah, seriously.
Honestly, like, I don't want to be that guy. Have it on a hard drive at home and have a backup stored on the cloud somewhere.
Have it locked in a safe somewhere.
I keep a hard drive in my parents' garage, just with all my really important stuff on it. Because if my house catches fire, that's not going to catch fire too.
Yeah, like we did a nice sync for Euro 2024, and the reason that we got that was because we had the stems ready to go when they needed them. So it's important.
Yeah, now I would add to that the number of times where A&R don't have masters saved is. So.
Admin people.
Do you or the artists you work with use AI in some clever way?
I mean, not yet, I think. There are two approaches. Some of them are excited that it's, they can use it for time-consuming tasks. But, some of them are frightened that, especially like film composers, they can soon lose their jobs.
And what do you tell them?
I personally hate it, so...
No, I think like from conversations that I've had with music supervisors and other people in that side of the industry is that they also don't want to use AI music either. So there is like a bit of hope at the end of the tunnel, especially when there's like with all the actor strikes and writer strikes, like there's rules in place now that productions can't really use AI music. So, but yeah.
I also find it quite reassuring from a personal standpoint that I think artistry and creativity is such a human thing. I'm clearly not a computer science graduate, but I think that it's going to be really, really hard to replicate the human touch. And I think as well, true artistry, like if you fed every song that was released before 1970 whatever into a machine, you still wouldn't have popped out David Bowie because nobody talked like David Bowie. And I think that's something that human touch and that creativity is really going to take a while to nail down from an AI perspective, if ever.
Yeah, I saw, I'm not going to name the company, but they gave us like a demo of their AI tool where they took a song and then made a Mandarin version of it. But it sounded so bad because it's obviously just like a Google Translate Mandarin version. Like you can't replicate that like a vocalist or something like that. It was really bad. So
I've seen similar things, and I was suitably not terrified, if that's reassuring to anybody concerned.
Yeah, that song's never going to go anywhere.
Yeah, there's a composer I know and work with sometimes. He's doing songs or music for advertising where turnaround time is super, short, and so he likes to like mix in some stuff from AI or generating maybe a harmony or something like a little bit of the music and then build around it, so it's not 100% synthetic, but maybe 20 or 30, 50, whatever. And then he also like considers it as just using samples almost, using music from someone else and incorporating into yours and building something completely new and original, but with certain elements that was not his. Right?
Yeah, I suppose like the biggest question really is who owns the copyright to that once they've made it.
Yeah.
Well, I guess the one who prompted maybe.
We could talk for all day on this.
We've gone on a big tangent.
Yeah, that's a different topic probably. Okay. Right. So, and what sort of, okay, just going back to developing artists, do you see any like big mistakes that people should avoid doing in their careers, or stuff they cannot really come back from?
I'm not sure about the stuff people can't come back from to a reasonable extent, but something that I've seen recently amongst some artists is forgetting that an overnight success is never an overnight success. It's just marketed to look like it. And I think, it's very, very hard not to get disheartened by putting out something you love and are so passionate about and have worked so hard on and have spent money on to what seems like radio silence. But I think trusting, if you really believe in your art and your campaign and your team, if you're fortunate enough to have a team, just kind of, I hate this phrase, and I can't believe I'm saying it, but trust the process, basically. And just know that nobody ever popped up after 2 months and was selling out a stadium.
Yeah. For me, like, it's not necessarily something that you can't come back from, but one of the biggest like barriers that we always have is if one of our artists or writers has written music with somebody else and they haven't got their like splits agreed or documented in some way. Like, I've had people saying, oh, it's fine, they're my cousin, like, we're never going to fall out, and but inevitably I've seen the other side of it where a band has broken up and they didn't have any, proof of who owns what, and that can get really messy and mean that we aren't necessarily going to be able to pitch the song to anyone. So I think that is something that needs to be sorted out. Okay. Yeah.
For me, I think maybe not something that you can't come back from, but don't blame or don't put your mistakes on someone else. Like, there are artists blaming, their managers, their record companies, everyone else around if something's not working. And, you're going to end up alone in the end because no one's going to want to work with you.
And fundamentally as well, just be nice. Yeah. Just be nice to people. Life's too short not to. And people always remember. And people work harder for people they like at the end of the day.
Yeah, and so what advice would you really give to up-and-coming artists who want to, build up a career outside their countries usually, or as a start? I
personally think that narrowing down, if you want to break globally or break internationally, amazing, but narrow it down, as we said earlier. I think otherwise you'll lose a lot of money and it probably won't work. But whereas if you target a few core markets and try to make some inroads there, and then target the next ones, then the next ones, you'll have more momentum behind you. And also just try and enjoy it. It's really, really stressful and really hard at times. And I think everybody within the industry has probably had moments where we've done something that we should be proud of. But we're thinking of the next thing, or we're so wrapped up in that, we just forget to take a minute and think, you know what, we've actually done quite well here. So on a personal note, just try and remember that.
Yeah, I'm trying to think how to follow that up. I think just, make sure you have your shit together in terms of like, having like all of your assets, your metadata, everything, have that all, and just don't dilute it too much. Can't think of anything. Maybe like educate yourself on different areas of the industry. You don't have to go like fully in depth, but if you're signing a contract, have some background knowledge on what you're doing, what you're going to give away. Never sign anything you don't fully understand. Yeah.
And if you can't explain it to somebody else in 30 seconds, you don't understand it well enough. Just try, that can really screw you up, basically.
The advice I would give to basically any artist, not just wanting to make it internationally, is I think be sure of who you are in your music. Be prepared to to work hard and be determined, because you're probably gonna hear no a lot. And try to do as much as possible yourself. To create your fan base, because this is all what it comes down to, having your own fan base as as wide as possible.
With the tools available, and also just for other reasons, there are more and more like single person bands, entities, whatever. Do you think it's easier to work with just one or two person artists, or?
Do you mean, I assume as a professional working with one or two?
Yeah, I mean, like 10, 15 years ago, there were just so much more bands with several band members, and now the number of people are just shrinking in an
I think that from a campaign sense, no. I think that purely logistically, if you're a band who wants to go on tour and there are 6 of you, that's a lot more expensive. And you're paying for more travel, hotel rooms, a bigger van, any of that. So I think that can be a barrier. But ultimately, if your band needs 6 or 7 people, your band needs 7 people. There's no argument around that.
Do you see any trend in that?
From our perspective, no, not really. If it's a band or, I don't know, duo or, solo artists.
Yeah, same. I think naturally sometimes there is normally 1 or 2 members in a bigger band that is like the person that replies. Like that's just their natural role. But it doesn't matter how many members
but
there
at the
are.
same time in publishing, you see that there are more and more producers in a song.
Yeah.
Do you work with many producers also on
yeah, we have a couple of producers like signed to us where they have cuts on lots of different like artist projects and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't see it as a massive barrier really.
Okay. All right. Anyone else? Questions?
Hi, I'm Leon. I'm from New York, but now I live in Budapest. Thank you guys so much for coming here today. The question is kind of more practical. You guys talked about how when you're dropping a track, you have to have a pre-release campaign, then you drop the track, and then you said there's a bunch of things the artist can do afterwards to feed the algorithm and to promote. Practically, what are some of those things?
I mean, it's basically about posting content and using all the formats that are available. So you can also repurpose your old stuff. It doesn't have to be new, but also people like raw content. It doesn't need to be like overproduced. It can be some silly and simple thing, and people will react to that.
Yeah, and I think it's really easy to think that you're spamming your audience or spamming your fans on socials, but realistically, percentile-wise, most people aren't going to see most of the stuff you post. So it's actually quite hard and really expensive to spam people nowadays. And I also think it's so dependent on the artist. Some artists have a really clear aesthetic and a predefined kind of visual campaign. That's amazing. But if you're the kind of artist who's willing to really give socials a go in the kind of new sense, just play with it and have fun. And also think, if I saw this, would I care? Fundamentally, that's what you're trying to do. Your art is an extension of you, and therefore your audience is an extension of you as well. And just think, if I saw this, would I think this is great? And if so, it's probably worth doing.
Yeah. Did you get enough practical advice? Okay. Anyone else? More questions? Yes.
I'd like to ask about getting back to the publishing part of it, at least the sing part of it. I had a question in my head if we're always talking about how different marketing campaigns and different opportunities that work on different apps, how the conversion work in different aspects, like a marketing campaign, how you make a conversion to one app to the other, and how you make followers, fans, and all these. And with the sync, depending on what sort of spot you land, in what show or commercial, anything like that. So I'm guessing there's plenty of, like you can be in the opening scene for a series, maybe end credits, something like that. Do you ever seen things happening, like, as you said, like it's not enough for an artist, but have you seen like better conversion with one particular spot if a song ended on the end credits scene or something like that?
I guess so. It's so different for every single like license that we've done. But we have like one track that was used in like an end credit scene of this horror TV show that was released on Hulu like years ago, where they're still doing like really good YouTube numbers from that because people are trying to find that song, I guess, from that TV show. But it's different every time. Like there's really no formula that we can say like, if you have your music as the title song, then you're definitely going to get X, Y, Z streams. Like it's so hard to predict.
Just a really random note that popped into my head, which we've actually seen statistically work well before, if I hear a great song on the closing credits of a TV show or something, and I don't get to Shazam it, what am I going to do? I'm going to Google the lyrics that I can remember. So make sure your lyrics are up somewhere online, in a YouTube description, anywhere. And also, I've seen people, tag it with also what it sounds like. If you can't quite make out the lyrics, obviously don't put it publicly, but try and find a way whereby other options of that also come up with the right song,
Yeah, maybe like when you're doing social posts around the song, like tag the show name and stuff like that in there so that people are like, oh yeah, I remember that song now. But yeah, lyrics is a good tip.
One final question, I think, for me is that, so with so many people making music, actually, with all the tools they have, there are tens of millions of people on BandLab or FL Studio, whatever. So when do you think someone should start thinking of like music as a career, or just, just leave it as a hobby? Do you encourage people to take this path, or just enjoy making music? It's a fun thing to do, and you should not really.
You know what? I really believe in access and availability and expression, and I think that if you're making stuff and you're really proud of it, you just want to play it for your friends at a party, amazing, carry on doing that. If you want to be the next Adele, carry on doing that. I think it's so individual and just so hard to work out as well. Like, I also make terrible music in my spare time on Logic. It lives on a hard drive, and I love it like that, because that's for me, and that's all I want it to be, and that's fine. But if you want to put your stuff out there, I mean, personally, I think it would terrify me, so good luck and fair play to anyone who does that. But I think that when it comes to a point of considering it, do I want this to be a career, do I want this to be just for me? I think that likely happens really organically. I think it might go from a place of, it might be fun to play a show. I might as well send this to people. I'm really proud of it. Let's just see what happens. I realised that was a non-answer to your question, but I'm not sure anyone has the answer.
No, it's a take on it, so yeah.
I think it should come, from that person. I would never approach anyone and say, you should do it for a living, because it's such a hard thing to do. So if you're not cut out for it, just don't do it.
Yeah. Equally, I don't think I've ever told someone, like, maybe you should give this up. It's not for you. So, yeah.
Okay. There's a question.
When you come across internationally with an artist, is it important for you for them to be strong in their local markets?
I think it can certainly help, because you have this background story you can share. So I think it is very important, yeah.
I would agree. I think it's important to have an audience, whether that exists digitally or in person. If you've got 100,000 followers on Instagram, or if you're selling out 500 capacity venues in your hometown, you're doing something right, basically. And I think that, like we said earlier, the narrative is so important, the story is so important. Obviously, the art comes first, but the campaign always comes second, and that shows the kind of roots of a campaign for me. So I think it is important.
No, I agree.
Okay. Well, in that case, thanks very much for being here and sharing all this knowledge and info. And so I'm sure you'll be around. So if people want to talk to, I hope you are approachable. So thanks very much, and stay around for the next one. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.